Good morning, Morai V'Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we are on Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, 11 lines down from the top of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchud Refuah Shelema for Rachel Simcha Bad Nahid, Daniel Moshe ben Farangis, this month's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shea family. Should be an ultimate zchut for the mishpacha be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. So we left a little bit kind of in the middle of the discussion of being a ma'aber, creating Adar Sheni, and the discussion was, what exactly is the length of Chodesh Ha'ibur? Is it a 30-day Chodesh? Is it a 29-day Chodesh? Or is it whatever Bet Din needs to do, and sometimes going to be 29 days, the extra month of a leap year, and sometimes going to be, 30, 29, depending on what the need is, and therefore you can't tell from before. Now the question was, if you can tell, imagine if the Chodesh HaIbur always is going to be 30 days, then why are you sending new shluchim on Adar Bet? I could figure out myself from the new Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph. I'll just add up the dates and I'll know when exactly it is, right? And the Gemara had a similar question also, that by Nisan, the Mishnah says in Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Bet, the upcoming Mishnah, that the 2 months out of the 6 that the Mishnah mentioned on Daf Yud Chet, 2 of those we allow the Edim who see the new moon to run to the Bet Din, even if it is on Shabbat, even though that they would have to do Chilul Shabbat, because we recognize the gravity of Pesach, we recognize the gravity of Yom HaKippurim, and having the Yamim Tovim of Chodesh Tishrei and the Yom Tov of Pesach be exactly on time, that's important enough for us to allow the Edim to even be Mechalel Shabbat, to give us the proper date, right? And Shnei Chodashim Mechalel Shabbat, the Gemara said at the end of Yutet Amud Bet, Al Nisan Val Tishrei, and says the Gemara, wait, if you're sending Edim on Tishrei and on Nisan, and you're allowing them to do Chilul Shabbat, means that I need to know when Rosh Chodesh Nisan is. But you just told me that maybe the Chodesh of Ibur, the extra month that we do on Adar Sheni, is going to always be Chaser. So if it's always going to be Chaser, then I could just add up myself the dates and I'll know Rosh Chodesh Nisan exactly when it's going to be. If it's always going to be Maleh, weiter I could know when it's going to be. So says the Gemara, if you tell me sometimes it could be Maleh, sometimes it could be Chaser, it depends on the will and the need of the Bet Din. Fine, I understand why you're allowing them to do Chilul Shabbat, because you really need to know exactly what the date is, and that one day makes a difference. Elai Amra at the top line. Elai Amra le'olam Chaser, if you tell me that it always is Chaser, then Amai Mechalelinan. Why do we do Chilul Shabbat, allow the Edim to do Chilul Shabbat, to go, all right, just do the cheshbon yourself. You could do the math. And Mar says, yes, correct, you could do the math, but we still have a mitzvah lekadesh al pi hariyah. This is a mitzvah that was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, that you see kazer re'eh v'kadesh, that you see the moon, and you sanctify the new moon based on the Bet Din and based on accepting the testimony of the witnesses that they saw it. After the shiur yesterday, I was discussing, was not on a live mic, so he was discussing the importance when we talk about Hashmonaim, talk about Hanukkah, talk about the Greeks trying to take dominion over Klal Yisrael. One of the things that they banned was Chodesh. I understand Shabbat, right? I understand Milah. I understand learning Torah. Chodesh? Chodesh was one of the things. Well, what's one of the first things that they had to take away? That you're not allowed to keep Rosh Chodesh. You're not allowed to announce it. Why? And there's a simple answer. There's a sophisticated answer. The simple answer is, well, if you don't know when the Rosh Chodesh is, it ruins the whole calendar. But the more sophisticated answer is because they recognized, they're very smart. They recognized that all they wanted was, they didn't care about Jews keeping mitzvot, as long as they assimilated, as long as they became Hellenized, they became Westernized, and they realized that so long as you have the koach of Torah Sheba'al Peh, the authority of the Bedin and the Sanhedrin, no assimilation is going to happen. That's the genius of HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving the Torah Sheba'al Peh and giving the power and the dominion to the Sanhedrin to be a living Torah, not just a document, right? And if you take that and you turn the Torah just into an amazing document, then you could have a PhD in Tanakh in the Greek colleges, obviously, right? They were the ones who came up with this. They were the first ones who translated the thing. They appreciated it. They created degrees in studying, Tanakh, and now obviously then Bible critics and so on and so forth. So you can imagine that becomes something so important and essential and central. So therefore, the one says, we do know how to do the math, but still, it's mitzvah lekadesh al pi arayah. We need to do it, but the way it's a mitzvah still, even though you know what the date is, to do it al pi arayah. Fine. So the Gemara had it back and forth, and the Gemara said, at the end, we're talking about the case that the 31st day falls on Shabbat, right? And therefore, the Beit Din is going to definitely be Mekadesh Nisan on that day because the months can't be more than 30 days. Anyways, so therefore, the reason is because mitzvah lekadesh al pi arayah. That's why you let it. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question on it. Mativ Rav Kana. Rav Kana asked, Kesheha mikdash kayam. This is another piece yet in the same Mishnah in the next page of the Gemara Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Bet, that when the Beit HaMikdash was standing, then the 2 months that we just mentioned were not the only 2 months that you allowed the Edim to be Mechal Shabbat to come to the Beit Din, but you did it on every single one of these months. Mikdash kayam mechalelinav al kulan. You would allow the Edim who saw the new moon to come running to the Beit Din on Shabbat, regardless of what month it is, not just on Nisan and Tishrei, but on any of them. Why? What's the pressing matter? They allow Chilul Shabbat. The pressing matter is the Korban of Rosh Chodesh. Miperet takanat ha-Korban, because of the proper tikkun of the Korban, that they had to be brought on every Rosh Chodesh. Now, let's pause here. If you tell me that mitzvah lekadesh al pi arayah, that we have a mitzvah to sanctify the new moon based on the witnesses and their testimony, then why do I need new reason of the Korban of Rosh Chodesh? I have sufficient reason. You know why I'm going to allow the Edim to come running to the Beit Din on Shabbat, desecrating Shabbat to come to Beit Din? Because mitzvah lekadesh al pi arayah. If that's sufficient reason for Nisan and for other Chodashim, it should be a sufficient reason for after the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed also. And yet, you see in the Mishnah upcoming in Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Bet, that only when Beit HaMikdash was standing, they allowed the Edim to come to Beit Din on Shabbat, not because Mitzvah Lekadesh Al Pi, because you have to do the Korban Rosh Chodesh. And hence, when you don't have korbanot, because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, we don't allow them to come on Shabbat. That tells me, and you, right, that just because there's mitzvah lekadesh ala pi hariyah, you're not just going to let people do chilul Shabbat because of that, right? That's like a checkmate, open and obvious question, says the Gemara. You see, all that heter of all the other months was not because mitzvah lekadesh al pi hariyah, that you have to see it and sanctify based on the testimony. It's because of a very specific reason of korban. So once that's not because mitzvah lekadesh al pi hariyah, once the other chodashim, the reason of the heter of Shabbat is not because of sanctification of the month based on the testimony, Nisan and Tishrei also is not because of that. The reason that we allow the Edim to come to Bedin on Shabbat for Tishrei, now that we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, and on Nisan, is not because mitzvah lekadesh al pi hariyah. It has to have a specific reason. So that's the kasha of the Gemara. So, now back to square one. Back to our question. Now that I proved to you that the reason we would ever allow any witness to run on Shabbat to the Bedin is not because of this concept that there's mitzvah, even though that we know the date. We could calculate the date in the math. We still let them come because it's mitzvah to do it al pi hariyah. That's not the reason. Once that's not the reason, it should dictate that if I could calculate the math of what day the Rosh Chodesh is, should we allow the Edim to be Mechal Shabbat? If I could calculate, absolutely not. So we're back to square one. Let's read the square one again. Says the Gemara, if you tell me sometimes Adar Bet is going to be Male, sometimes Adar Bet is going to be Chaser, so I don't know in my calculations when Rosh Chodesh Nisan is going to be, right? Because again, Rabotai, for those who were not here yesterday, if I know Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph is on day X, right? And Adar Bet is always 29 days, right? So do I need a shaliach to go for Nisan? No, once I know the Rosh Chodesh of Adar Bet, and I know Adar Bet is going to always be 29 days, so I'll just add 29 days to that. The 30th day is going to be Rosh Chodesh. Gamarnu, Hazaku Baruch, right? A 5-year-old could do that. Why are you sending shluchim out, right? Now, the worst part is you're allowing shluchim to go on Shabbat to Bedin to do that, where you don't really need it, right? There's a whole question when you say even things that are mutar on Shabbat. For instance, Milah is mutar on Shabbat, right? Bayom HaShemini, Yimol Besar or Lato. When it says Bayom HaShemini, means you will do it on the 8th day regardless of what day that is. If it's on Yom Kippur, you do it on Yom Kippur. Shabbat, you do it on Shabbat. Doesn't make a difference, right? So there's a whole question. This is in the 18th parak of Masechet Shabbat, parak Rabbi Yisraeli the Milah, the 19th parak. The Shabbat, the Rashba says, Shabbat is d'chuya etzel Milah. It's not hutra. Even though that you're allowed to do chilul Shabbat, it is the push is there. Whatever you could push off Shabbat, halachically, you could push. Whatever you can't push, it will stay asur. So what's the difference? I'll give you a food for thought, okay? I'm not discussing this on a halachic way. I'm making a ha'ara, right? That means, like the halacha is, the Shulchan Aruch says, if you have a sick person that's died, it's in life-threatening situation, right? And you need to shecht to get fresh meat for them, right? Do you have to shecht in a way that your issur of shechita is a smaller shechita? Do you shecht the smaller animal, the bigger animal? The one says, well, it's a shechita of an animal. It's an animal. It's life, right? How about if I need one fig, right? can I cut something that will be 2 figs versus 1 fig? He says, oh yeah, you have to do that because it's the chuya. It's not that it's not Shabbat. Because this guy is sick, dying, right? It's as if it's not Shabbat anymore. You can just whatever you want, right? No, you still have to have a calculated action to diminish. Now, on Shabbat, for instance, you're doing Brit Milah, right? The way they used to do Brit Milah was 2 different cuts, so to speak, right? If a normal person, a normal mohel would be doing Brit Milah, they would have to cut, well, in every process of a Brit, 2 things get cut, right? One is what we call the orla, the foreskin. And then another thing is a membrane beneath the foreskin, which we call it ora priya. It's a thinner, more delicate skin right beneath the orla, right? And the way Rambam says, you cut the orla, and then you tear, right? B'sipornaim, with your nails. That's why Mu'alim, some of them have specifically, sharp or longer nails. You tear that, and then you bend it back. So that's, both of those are acts of Chilul Shabbat, if this happens to be on Shabbat, right? Yeah. Now, there is a discussion, and this started from the time of the Geonim. Rabbi Haikaon has brought in a tshuva that, the Shulchan Gavoah writes in Saloniki, the expert Mu'alim used to do Milah u'Priya bebat achat, right? They would break the adhesion between that membrane and the atara, and when they would cut, with one cut, everything would be gone, right? And he praises this minhag. This became a machloket later on if it's mutar. If it's not mutar, there are those who say, no, it has to be priya b'sipornaim, right? And you're not yotze even if you do it bebat achat. Massive machloket, right? Therefore, you'll have some fathers that will come to the mohel, say, can you do priya b'sipornaim? Can you tear that membrane with your nails, not cut them at the same time? And the mohel, if he's trained, he'll say yes. If not, he says, sorry, go to the next mohel, right? There are few people who still do priya b'sipornaim separately. What would be the halacha on Shabbat, right? What would be the halacha on Shabbat? If you tell me that halacha it allows you to do one cut for both of them, and that's even lechatchila accepted. So, and you tell me, like the Rashba says, that on Shabbat, maybe is the chuya. Shabbat is the chuya etzel milah, right? Then it should dictate that you should lechatchila do one cut and do milah priya bevat achat, not 2 tears and 2 chilul Shabbats, because you still have to be mindful to minimize the amount of chilul Shabbat, even though that you're allowed to do chilul Shabbat on Shabbat for brit milah, right? So that's a similar thing over here. That if even though that you're allowed to technically be mechalel Shabbat for edim, that's only if you can't tell what date is going to be. If I could calculate it myself, so why am I allowing the edim to run to the bedin, right? So says the Gemara, if you tell me the Adar Sheni is always going to be chaser, and I know the Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni, so just add 29 days, and the 30th day would be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Gamarnu, I know already the date of Rosh Chodesh. So says the Gemara, Amay Mechal Linan, why do we allow the edim to run to the bedin? And the one says Tiyufta. That is indeed a powerful question, right? Shver. Now, says the Gemara, Ki ata Ula, when Ula came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, it's one of the individuals who came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar, Ibru ale Elul. So they in Eretz Yisrael, they just were ma'aver de Elul, right? So says the Gemara, Amar Ula. Now, normally speaking, you're not ma'aber de Elul. But says, the Gemara, Amar Ula, Yad'i chaverin bavlai, my tivuta avdinam ba'ad. I wonder if the Babylonian friends of ours right, our chevra in Bavel, in the Galut, know what tova, what good, what favor we did to them in Eretz Yisrael by being ma'aber the Elul, right? So my tivuta says about what's this tivuta, what's this favor that they did? Ula amar mishum yarkaya. Ula said it's machloket amuraim. Ula said it's because of the yerakot. What does that mean? That means they would watch carefully and closely to see if keeping the month the way it was would end up resulting in having Yom Tov and Shabbat back to back. Then you have to have Oneg Yom Tov, right? And when you pluck the vegetables 2 days before, right, by the third day, it's going to be nichmash, it's going to be all shriveled up and dried up, and it's not going to be Oneg Yom Tov. Therefore, making it that you have a day pushed off, that would make it that you have now time between Shabbat and Yom Tov to have fresh vegetables for Shabbat and fresh vegetables for Yom Tov. Rabbi Acha bar Chanina Amar, he says, no. It's not because of the vegetables, it's because of funerals. Amar Mishum Metai is because of the kavod of the dead bodies. Because imagine to yourself what happens if Shabbat and Yom Kippur fall back to back, right? So somebody died right before Shabbat, and now the body is just sitting there for the entire Shabbat, the entire Yom Kippur. By Monday rather, it's going to be, it's going to be smelly, it's going to be bloated, it's going to rot away, and that's not a proper respect. So therefore, because of that, they would try to make sure that this doesn't happen. Pushing it one day off would obviously solve that problem. By the way, why did I mention Yom Kippur, not Yom Tov? Because on Yom Tov you could use the goyim, right? As we'll see in the Gemara immediately. Says the Gemara, my benai, what's the difference between these two reasons? Is there any nafkamina? The Gemara says, yeah, of course there's nafkamina. Ika benayu Yom Kippurim shchal liot achar Shabbat. A Yom Kippur that falls to be on Sunday is the nafkamina. What's the nafkamina? Manda amar mishum metaya. The Manda Amar who holds is because of the dead bodies being able to be buried properly on time. Then Ma'abrinan. Then of course we would want to be Ma'aber de Chodesh to prevent Yom Kippur from falling together with Shabbat, back to back. And that's sufficient reason. Umandama Mishum Yarkaya, but if you follow the Mandama that the reason for this is Yerakot, well, on Yom Kippur, you're not eating, hopefully, right? So how is it going to be? If Shabbat and Yom Kippur fall back to back, you have fresh vegetables for Shabbat, right? Sudam Afsekid is on Shabbat. So in Shabbat, you're set to go, like a regular Shabbat, like any other Shabbat. And then on Yom Kippur, you're not eating anyways. And on Motzei Yom Kippur, you go to your garden and you pluck fresh ones. So there's no reason to mess with the calendar because of Yerakot, because you're not eating on that Yom Tov. That's the one Yom Tov that you're not eating it, right? Says the Gemara, so correct, but according to Ula, still the reason of the dead bodies is a solid reason, right? Why wouldn't he reckon with that? He should agree that we should be Ma'aber de Chodesh for those people who are going to pass away on Shabbat or Erev Shabbat right before Chashechah, and now for 2-3 days the body is just laying there. So that should be a sufficient reason. And the Gemara concurs with that. The Gemara says, yes, correct. Ella, that can't be the nafkamina. In a year that Yom Kippur is going to fall on Sunday, everyone should agree that we should be ma'aber the chodesh to prevent that from happening. So what's nafkamina then? Says the Gemara, the nafkamina is a different scenario. The scenario is Yom Tov asamuch Shabbat. When Yom Tov falls to be mamash next to Shabbat, ben milefanea, ben milachara, either on Friday or on Sunday, then we can understand that the mandamar holds because of yerakot. Obviously, the reason is solid. It's there because you can't have fresh vegetables like that. But says the Gemara, mandamar mishum metaya, the one that holds, normally speaking, we would be ma'aber de chodesh because we don't want dead bodies to be laying around. That does not apply on a regular Yom Tov and Shabbat. Only applies on Yom Kippur, as we mentioned before, because when it falls with a regular Yom Tov and Shabbat, efshar be'amemi, you could use goyim amira lakum for kavod amet, for the respect of a deceased body. You could use amira lakum that normally would not be allowed, but here is a specific heter that you could use the goyim to bury the body. Ulman Damar Mishum Metaya, says the Gemara over here also. According to the Manda Amar, that says because of the dead bodies, le'abre mishum yarkaya. Even though that reason doesn't apply because you could use goyim, but the reason of the vegetables should be still there. Gemara says no, efshar b'chamimi. There is a way, the science of which I don't fully understand, but there is a way to refresh the vegetables and prevent them from going bad, and therefore they are not going to reckon with that, and that would become the case. The case in discussion, that would be the nafkamina between the mandamar that holds the reason is for the dead bodies and the mandamar that holds the reason is for vegetables, having fresh and nice food for the Yom Tov. Says Yachi, Ma'ishna ledidan afilu leditu. So Gemara says, wait a second. Fine, I understand that. But Ula came from Eretz Yisrael, and what did he say to the Bnei Bavel? He said, we did you such a favor. You did us a favor, not yourself? If that's the reason, it should be a favor for them also. If vegetables, having fresh vegetables on Yom Tov is the reason, what, they don't have to have fresh vegetables in Eretz Yisrael? Right? They need it too. So why did you do a favor to us, not to you? The Gemara says, no, it's different. Ledidan, chavil lan alma, ledidhu lo chavil lehu alma. The mezek ha'avir, the atmosphere and the weather and all of that in Bavel was much worse, harder, whatever it was, and things went bad much quicker. In Eretz Yisrael, it's the mezek ha'avir is perhaps drier and less hot in that way, depending on where you are in Eretz Yisrael, obviously, and where you're in Bavel. And therefore, they didn't have that problem as much as in Eretz Yisrael. Their vegetation would stay fresh for 2 days. And therefore, it was more of a takana, thinking about the Jews in Bavel. Says the Gemara. Eini? V'hatani Rabba bar Shmuel, Yachol, kshem shma'avrin et hashana lesorech, kach ma'avrin et hachodesh lesorech. The Gemara is going to discuss now the Ibur Chodesh and Ibur Shana, right? Now, Ibur Chodesh means the month is going to be Maleh versus being Chaser, 30 days versus being 29 days. And Ibur Shana means you are going to add a 13th month because you want to make sure that Nisan falls, well, not Nisan per se, but Chag Pesach falls to be after the start of Tkufat Nisan, which means the season of spring, right? So that would be adding a month to the year versus adding a day to the month. And says the Gemara, you see from here, the Gemara is asking, actually setting up a question. The Rabbi bar Shmuel says, Yachol kishem shma'abrin et hashana lesorech, just like when you are ma'aber the shana, you add a 13th month lesorech, kach ma'abrin et hachodesh lesorech. You could also be ma'aber the chodesh to add a day, a 30th day lesorech. Says the Gemara, Talmud Omar hachodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim kazeh re'eh v'kadesh. Says, can you just do it the way you want? Because we came out, this Amud, if someone would read this Amud, would say, well, the Bedin has the discretion, they'll do what they want, right? vegetables, right? Fresh vegetables, good enough for a reason. Ibur Chodesh, Hazaku Baruch. Wait a second. Who says you have the authority to do that? Right? Actually, this has been discussed by Rabbi Bar Shmuel. He actually asked this question: can we just do Ibur Chodesh when we see it fit? And the Gemara says, absolutely not. Because the Pasuk says, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month should be a Rosh Chodesh for you. And Chazal tell us that Moshe Rabbeinu was shown the beginning of a month. Hashem told him this, Kazeh Re'eh V'Kadesh. You could only be Mekadesh the Chodesh when you see this, right? The immortal words, Kazeh Re'eh V'Kadesh. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu instructed Moshe Rabbeinu with. And therefore, you're not allowed to just decide, well, today is too early for Rosh Hashanah. Tomorrow, we'll do Ibur Chodesh, Hazak Baruch, vegetables, amazing. You can't do that, right? Amar Rava, or Rabba, or Rav, whatever gisa you have. Lo kasha, kan le'abro, kan le'kadesho. It depends if you want to be me'aber de chodesh or mekadesh de chodesh. Obviously, you have to see that that type of a moon to be mekadesh de chodesh. That's kazeh re'eh v'kadesh. But if you want to be me'aber, la'asod et ha'chaser maleh lesorech mutar. To make the chodesh that's supposed to be chaser, to make it maleh, that we have the allowance if there is tzorech, the bedin feels is sufficient. That's not the same thing as being mekadesh. The chodesh, we have to spend a little more time on explaining what exactly this means, which really takes us to the next piece of the Gemara, an amazing thing. This is going to be an astronomical Gemara. Quite literally, we're going to actually talk about astronomy and the moon and the orbits and the sun and the earth and all the eclipse and all those things, B'ezrat Hashem, in the next year.